Hello?
Hey, Mark. It's Eric.
Hey, Eric. How are you?
I'm doing really good. How are you, man?
Good, thanks.
Welcome to Season 3 of the FNRad Snowboard Podcast.
Okay, perfect. 1 second, please.
Tala in ett meddelande efter tonen.
Hi, this is Sean. I'm not here right now.
You have reached Mike.
Hi, this is Jim. Leave me a message, and I will call you back as soon as I can.
Hi, you've reached Jeremy Jones.
Yeah, I'm going to call you back in 10. Sorry, dude.
Hey, listeners. This week's episode is brought to you by Wired Snowboards, a Vancouver-based company that builds a great, high-quality product. At the beginning of last week, I launched into what I thought was a powder field on my Chase 162, and it was like a drop-off to death cookies, and I landed directly on the middle of the board on an ice chunk that should have broken the board, probably. I'm stoked to say the board is completely fine. So go to wiredsnowboards.com and use the offer code FNRad at checkout. You'll save 10% off a high-quality board. We're also brought to you by the Boardroom Snowboard Shop, Vancouver's premier snowboard shop. They ship to anywhere in North America. They offer a performance and price guarantee on everything that they sell. Go to boardroomshop.com and enter the offer code FNRAD5 at checkout to save 5% off anything that's on sale, or FNRAD10 saves you 10% off any regular price stuff. Each season, I've interviewed a photographer or filmer because snowboarding wouldn't be what it is today without magazines and videos documenting the progression. Our guest this week was the first senior photographer for Transworld Snowboarding. Mark Gallup has taken so many amazing shots of so many legends. And if you've listened to FNRad before, you probably know I love talking and hearing about Craig Kelly. And this episode has a lot of Craig talk. I was super stoked to talk to Mark Gallup. I think we should start at the Neil Daffern photo. That's how you got
Neil Daffern would be the very beginning of my existence as a photographer.
Mark had a great idea. We went through Mark's Instagram feed and chose a bunch of photos to talk about, and you're invited to follow along in his feed. So if you can, pop on Instagram and follow Mark Gallup, Gallup, and I'll try and guide you through the photos that we talk about. But the photo of Neil can be found way down towards the bottom of Mark's feed. It's a horizontal black and white of a guy on a swallowtail jumping with some rocks in the shot. So pause the show and find that photo.
I kind of owe my photography to that guy. I owe my snowboarding career to him, probably.
Well, from what I've heard, the whole of snowboarding owes Neil some gratitude for sure, right?
Yeah. So this photo, I'm assuming you're meaning the black and white horizontal of him.
Absolutely.
Swallowtail.
Yep.
It's a scan of an 8x10 print.
Oh, cool.
From 1984, and it has my writing on it. Yeah, it says Mark Gallup, Neil Daffern's Sunshine Village, 1984.
Incredible.
So I grew up with Neil, in junior high school, probably in elementary school maybe. Actually, yes. And when I started first, I started as a skier, and Neil was a skier. And we were both part of the Sunshine Ski team when we were 14 or 15 years old. And I was skiing with Neil every day up on Wawa T-Bar, just training and all that sort of thing, and we were buds. And then in the summertime, we went to school together. We were skateboarding. And we had a skateboard ramp at my house, and we had a skateboard ramp at his house. And there was an indoor skateboard park called Skatopia.
Rad.
And we were just hanging out basically because we were kids, right?
Yep.
So you spend your entire summer with a handful of kids, and Neil was one of them, and we would just skate our asses off all summer long. And he would make his own skateboards. He had a press in his basement that he developed and made and invented that would press. Basically, he took hockey sticks, cut up hockey sticks.
Amazing.
Laminated them together and made skateboards, right? And they're gorgeous. They look like cedar strip canoes.
That's amazing.
So one winter we were skiing, and he shows up, and he has a snowboard. And this is like an alien product, in 1982, and we're like, he's just like, yep, I converted my press. I'm pressing snowboards now, and he pressed his own snowboard.
So this is something he's made.
Yeah, and he made his own snowboards, and at the time he was really into heavy metal, although I wasn't at the time. But he was into Slayer.
Nice.
So he was pressing these snowboards in his now expanded and converted skateboard press, and he was calling them Slayers.
That is so did he sell some of those, or did they were just his boards for riding?
Well, they were his boards. I don't think he had intentions on selling.
Mm-hmm.
And he maybe, no, you know what? There might be some Slayers out there, actually, at one point. And you might have to talk to Ken Achenbach about it.
Yeah.
But then another guy named James Classen got involved, and I believe they changed the name to Outland.
Mm-hmm.
So Neil and James got into making even more progressive and more fine-tuned snowboards called Outland snowboards.
So in 1984, you shoot this photo. Are you just shooting it because you like to shoot photos?
Well, yeah, I was a photographer. I just got out of high school.
Mm-hmm. And
the day I got out of high school, I moved to Banff, and I slept in the back of my 1962 Beetle that summer.
Nice.
And I still have the car, by the way, 62 Beetle ragtop. And, just living in Banff. And Neil, that winter, I'm still riding with my buds. Neil shows up with a snowboard, and it's a really cool shape, and I think it is one of his board. Well, at that point, it probably would be his board.
Yep.
And also, he was, credited by Kevin Kinnear from Transworld as the first guy to invent the high back.
Oh, wow. Yeah, there is a bit of a, I don't want to say controversy over that, but there's definitely different people vying for.
Exactly. And he, I would say, like Kevin believes, and there's a lot of people believe, that he was the first guy to invent the high back binding. And he, of course, everybody at the time was on Sorels.
Yep.
And then people were stuffing, ski boot tongues. Even Craig Kelly was doing that, putting ski boot tongues and duct tape in his soft boots to stiffen it up.
Yeah, there's a photo in your feed where you can see that.
Actually, I think of Craig Kelly in a slalom course.
That's right. Yeah.
At Sunshine Village.
Yeah, let's talk about that one. You found that recently. You were just going through some negatives.
Yeah. So if we move forward from 1984 of Neil Daffern to, I believe it was a photo from 1986.
Yeah, let's take a look at that one. I'm gonna click on it because you recently posted that as something.
I have to scroll up here.
Yeah, me too.
There's only 155 photos on my Instagram. So I came to Instagram pretty late. I was
there it is.
Doing I guess I'm going to call it a documentary. It's a documentary film thing called Underexposed, and it was about a up and coming snowboard photographer named Mason Mason, and I was like his mentor in the show, and is on APTN.
Nice.
Which is only available in Canada.
Perfect.
So I got involved with this show somehow. I don't know how. So as a result, I had to, they said, you know what, Mark, you got to get on Instagram.
And were you resistant to get on Instagram out of photography principle, or were you just, that's technology's just not for me?
No, I'm pretty technical savvy.
Yeah.
I just wasn't motivated, I don't think. I kind of, my time was through the 90s and 2000s. I just was pretty hardcore at that time, being a photographer and so involved with a lot of firsts of a lot of things. And, when we got into these 2000 teens,
yeah,
I was just kind of laid back more, and I didn't really care, actually.
Right.
And it seems at this time there's a lot of interest in the whole vintage and the history of snowboarding.
Oh, absolutely.
And so my entire Instagram feed is all about the history of snowboarding. And of course, I shot a lot of skiers. I would say 80% of it is snowboarding.
The people that are commenting and liking your photos are big-time snowboard people. Is that weird to have that kind of itemized feedback compared to like a photo that you say would, you shoot a beautiful photo and it's printed in a snowboarding mag, and you may get a few pats on the back from friends or family or people in your circle, but you don't have it written out as a list. You know what I mean? Like, okay, 347 people saw this. You could know the numbers of, say, a magazine distribution, like, probably, hundreds of thousands of people saw this thing.
I would say, like, a lot of my Instagram feedback, it has nothing to do with friends or family.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I've been, I've traveled and met and had excellent relationships and amazing experiences with so many people in the snowboard industry, from editors to photographers to writers to publishers to just moguls and athletes, especially, obviously, because you're with every athlete and you just have this amazing experience with, traveling and being with these people at a very personal level.
Absolutely.
So that's where the images come from. Like, you see an image and you think, oh, okay, cool, that's whatever. It's a shot of Craig Kelly, so some guy shot it. But no, it's not. You traveled with that person. You slept in a hotel room with that person. You sat there and figured out what's happening with the rental car, and you're dealing with lost luggage together.
Yeah.
And you have a lot of pain and suffering, and you have a lot of amazing moments with that person. So it becomes really personal.
Absolutely, and a lot of the shots in your feed, and just like from magazines that I remember, very intimate shots with athletes that you can just tell that they are comfortable with you in the room.
Well, yeah, that's true. Well, thanks for noticing that.
Yeah, well, definitely. We can talk. Actually, before we move to the one I was just about to mention, the Victoria one that you opened your Instagram feed with. This Craig one that you found, we're looking at here. All right, we're going to move 2/3 of the way up Mark's feed to find the photo of Craig turning around a gate. It's between someone shooting a gun and a guy doing what looks like a suitcase method on a Burton cruiser in a red coat.
He's got his little tiger claws out.
And he has some sort of tongue on top of his boots for sure. So he's experimenting with something.
So he has sorels, and he's in the rear foot. He has a ski boot tongue.
Yep.
That he put a sim sticker on.
Yeah, that's it.
And when I look at this, actually, I was going to mention people that follow me. So first of all, there's one. The one I see here, it says liked by Kai Peterson, and that's what I see.
Yeah.
And so that's Obviously Trevor Peterson's son, who I remember who was born. So I think about the people that like these things, and of course Kai Peterson pretty much likes every single one of my photos.
Yeah, I see Kevin Jones is on my feed.
And then down low it shows Jeremy Jones. He comments, sitting down to watch Let It Ride with my kids right now.
Isn't that great? Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
That's totally cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the kind of feedback I'm talking about. It's like, you're probably the best photographer for writing the story of the photo. And you hear it in your comments every time. People are like, okay, when are you making a book?
Yeah, I keep hearing the book comment over and over again.
Yeah.
I know we want to get back to the photos, but recently, every time I write something, Colin Adair, who's like, an amazing editor and writer.
Absolutely.
Every time he's like, we need to do something here, damn it. So actually, we've been emailing back and forth the last couple of days.
Great.
And you're like, you know what? You're right. And I'm being, coaxed into this.
Good.
By Colin Adair. So I'm, it's a long process. So every journey starts with one step. I think that's going to happen here soon.
Yeah, the determination on Craig's face in this photo, like I had to look really closely. For context clues, because I don't recognize everybody in every photo. Obviously, no one could, but I was like, that just it's an excellent photo of him from so long ago.
And I have, I remember that contest. And I remember talking to people and all my usuals, you know, like Ken Achenbach, and I
Yep.
first met Jose Fernandez,
Yep.
the Swiss Air Team. Just met all these people, and the people that I already knew, Lester Quitza,
Yep.
and Evan Feen, and
Nice.
just amazing people. No one there talked about this Craig Kelly guy.
Wow.
He's totally under the radar. He shows up. I don't think he even came with anybody. And he's at this contest, and like there's pictures in my Instagram of like I'm shooting Terry Kidwell,
Yep.
and there's this kid standing in the background, and it's Craig Kelly.
There's two,
And-
really good ones of Craig watching Terry and then Terry watching Craig.
I don't remember those two guys like stopping and talking to each other, or I just remember we set up this session where like Kidwell was hitting a jump, and they hit it, and then they walk back up and they hit it again, and then I distinctively remember this kid who is Craig Kelly just kind of seeing us doing this and kind of latching onto it and starts hitting the jump, and I don't remember him talking to anybody, but he was just saw us doing this session and he just started hitting it.
That's so rad. Yeah, I love in this photo you can also see that it's a Pepsi Cola penny with a snowboard shop sticker over the logo.
Yeah. That was classic Ken Achenbach. I'm sure Ken went around, gave everybody, Ken was all about stickers.
I love it.
And he would just have stickers everywhere, be on chairlifts and, bathrooms.
Incredible.
And,
yeah, there's still a snowboard shop sticker on my route here in Vancouver. I'm a mailman, and there's one. I'll put a photo of it on my Instagram feed. It's pretty awesome. Yeah, that's an old sticker for sure.
Yeah, and it was so cool to find this shot. I'm looking at a negative, and I see this shot of a guy with good style going around a gate, and I'm like, I wonder who that is. And so I scanned it, and I was like, oh my God.
It's such a gem of a shot.
And there's another photograph of this with the same story of Craig in the half pipe the same time. And let me just see here. I think he's wearing blue.
Okay, so now you're going to scroll down into Mark's older photos. And the one we're talking about is a snowboarder in an all-blue outfit on a gray day on an old black Sims roundtail with red strapped Sims bindings.
Yeah, and it's kind of I think it's a kind of a guy in the sky shot.
It is.
A little bit.
Yeah.
It's got Mount Brewster in the background. It's very
Cool.
gray skies,
Mm-hmm.
blue pants, and a light blue cotton jersey,
Totally. Yeah, and he's riding the Terry Kidwell roundtail with
Yes.
with first generation Sims high backs, the red.
Yeah.
With the red clasp buckles. That's incredible.
And the Sorels, of course.
Just,
He might even have a fanny pack on there.
It looks like, hey? And the gloves, just like big gloves over the
His
over
mitts.
the
He was all about,
wet
you know what?
sweatshirt.
He wore mitts then and, some gloves, but he's always a mitt guy,
Yeah.
I always liked his hand puppets. He always had hand puppets.
But that's
So
a
here's
gr-
another
that's a gorgeous
example
shot.
of the dugout half pipe at Sunshine Village on Strawberry Chair,
Yep.
with like a couple of hits that are properly kind of cut, and the rest of the pipe is, 4 feet tall.
Yeah. Just
And here he is just doing the one hits,
it's incredible.
at Sunshine with, you see the runs in Wawa T-Bar in the background and Mount Brewster in the background.
So if we go a little further back in your feed, is the picture of Craig where you can see the Sims base and you can see the sweatshirt. Is that from the same day? That might be from the same day.
Oh, he's tweaking out there.
Yeah.
With,
Big Method.
Yeah, Big Method with the Sims base.
Yeah, and is that Terry Kidwell watching him from the left there?
Yep. So
That's
standing there with a
incredible.
gray T-shirt on or
Yeah.
gray sweater with a pink bandana on his and holding a snowboard.
And just his body language is like he's watching Craig. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Everybody's watching Craig, but he is watching Craig, which is incredible. I love that.
Yeah. So you
shot.
got Terry Kidwell kind of looking at this kid and going,
Yeah.
"Who's this dude?"
Yeah. Yeah.
So you know who you got back there? So you got first from left to right, you have Terry Kidwell
Yep.
in red
Yep.
up to his waist and horizon is Chris Carroll.
Yep.
And then the guy in the one-piece gray is Steve Matthews.
Yeah, I don't know who Steve Matthews is.
So Steve Matthews, I went to, I didn't know Steve Matthews at this time.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's 1984, and in 1992, Steve Matthews and his girlfriend Terry Ringstorff, we went and did the very first Himalayan snowboard descent.
Wow.
In the Langtang Himal of Nepal. So the very first snowboard descent in 1992, and we did an article for Snowboarder magazine.
That's crazy. That's incredible.
So here he is. He's standing in this photo, and he was my future Nepalese bride.
Yeah. That is absolutely awesome.
I think the next guy with the blue with the red shoulders could be Don Smith. I'm not sure.
This is at Sunshine Village as well. So
yeah, this is the exact same time. So here's this kid doing a super crazy tweak method.
Yeah.
That I just don't remember anybody kind of paying attention to him except for he kept jumping in front of all the photographers.
Right. He
and he's making an impact here.
Absolutely. He knew how to play the game, and he played it right away. Yeah.
No, he was. You know what? A lot of people. Okay. You know what? There was this thing about Jake Burton, and how Jake versus Sims. Jake was a businessman, and Tom. They say Jake is the snowboarding company, and Tom was the snowboarder company.
Sure.
There's a conversation about that, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Tom was a snowboarder. Jake was a snowboarding. You know what? Nothing wrong with that. Jake is a businessman. And people give him shit for that, but you know what? Craig was a businessman.
Oh, yeah.
He was an amazing businessman.
Yep.
He was, obviously, we know, was an amazing athlete and left a legacy that's, the Jimi Hendrix of snowboarding or, whatever. He is Craig Kelly. We know what he is.
Absolutely.
But the thing that people didn't see that got him there is, I do trips with him, and he is going through his photo incentives. He's going through his contracts. We're sitting at Ritalik Lodge, and he's going through his paperwork. That's what he did. When you're, in the evenings, after a day of snowboarding, he's doing business, and he's figuring shit out, and he's got photocopies of all the photos he got published because he got paid. There's nothing wrong with that. You're making a living and a lifestyle.
Right.
He's a good snowboarder.
Right.
And but he is a great businessman, and he bought properties here in Fernie, BC. He was a shareholder of Island Lake Lodge, and he made a huge impact, and he made a lot of amazing business decisions.
Yeah, he paved the way for people to become paid professional snowboarders.
Yeah, he made a difference that way. Like he set a standard.
Yeah.
So when people are like, oh, you sold out, yada yada, it's a bullshit.
No, he was he did what he loved, and
he did what he loved, and he made a living at it. And you have to be smart to make a living at it, and that's what Jake did.
Yep.
Jake is doing. I mean, he loves snowboarding. He truly does. I've spent a lot of time with Jake. There's photos on my Instagram feed of Jake. We've done a lot of photo shoots together. Like Burton used to call me and say, okay, you are doing the one-on-one trips with Jake. You organize it. You figure it out. I was like, okay, cool. So I would call up Private Heli in Pemberton, and I would call up friends who are guides and say, okay, I need guide, I need heli, I need time. This is Jake Burton. I'd organize the thing, right?
Wow.
And that's what we would do. So it'd be like me and Jake, and then Jake would bring a buddy that he grew up with, and it'd be like the 5-star treatment. We would just like eat at the best restaurants in Whistler, heli ski, heli board every day, get shit done, get photos done. And then next year he'd be like, where do you want to go? And like, okay, how about we go to New Zealand? And then we do a trip to New Zealand together. Incredible. Same crew, same setup. We have some filmers, Gary Pendergrass is with us. Love that guy.
Yeah.
And, we just do trips, right? Go make things happen, right?
That's just incredible. So yeah, let's look at the Terrier photo. We're pretty close there. I just clicked on it.
1994 in teens.
Yeah. So this is on one of those trips.
Yeah.
Right.
So this is early on. He's on the sword board.
Yeah.
He's jumping off a little cliff there. It's kind of funny. I started off as a skier, taking photos. I was getting covers of Powder Magazine, but everybody was open-minded back then. And then, I went to the Las Vegas trade show, ran into Kevin Kinnear, and Kevin's like, I've seen your stuff in the ski magazines. I want you to shoot for snowboarding.
Rad.
I was like, okay, cool. So then that very same day, they said, we're doing a story with Billy Miller. We want you to get on a plane this afternoon, fly to Snowbowl, Arizona, and take photos for Billy's story. And I'm like, seriously? I just met you. And like, yes. Snowboarding was young and fun and spontaneous at that time.
Right.
And that's how I started, right? I just jumped on a plane with Arizona, we actually got the cover of the Brian Harper was the cover.
I remember that cover.
And that's how I started with Transworld. So here I am. I'm a skier. I have photos published in a track record with ski magazines, and started getting stuff in Transworld. I actually became the first senior photographer for Transworld.
That's amazing.
And the phone rings, and it's Burton. They're like, we want you to shoot our catalogs, early season European catalogs, for the trade shows. It happens October, November, or something like that.
Yep.
So I go to Teen France, and I show up with skis, and then I'm at the hotel hanging out with Jake, and Jake looks at me and looks at my feet, and he's like, you got to change that, man. you can't be here on skis. I love Jake because obviously we spent time together after that. But
yeah.
So he hands me a snowboard, and we're literally standing at the front door of this hotel, which is ski in, ski out. You're on a slope.
Yep.
It's like you strap in and you go down. So he hands me a snowboard, and I proceed to strap in my back foot, and he's like, no, front foot. So I get my front foot in, and the T-bar is like 100 feet away.
Oh God!
And I make my first turns ever like towards this T-bar, and I get on a T-bar.
Unreal.
With my camera pack. So that was my introduction to snowboarding. Was Jake Burton gave me a board. I get on a T-bar with a camera bag, and I go shoot Terry A. Hawkinson.
That is incredible. So there's a caption in this photo, too, where you're just talking about how the team manager at the time told you, hey, keep Terrier out as long as possible. All right. The Terrier photo we're talking about is right near the bottom of Mark's feed.
Yeah, so it was Barry Dugan.
Brad.
He, Terrier had a bit of an attitude, but, Terrier was just an introverted kid at the time,
Oh, I understand.
For me, it was hard to figure him out. We're good friends now. I saw him at the Bank Slalom, the 25th anniversary.
Yep.
And he approached me, and I didn't even see him. He knocked me on the shoulder and called me a dickhead or something. I turned around, and it's like, oh, Terry, we hugged. And
yeah, rad.
But, no, we've known each other a long time. And when I first met him, I just kind of couldn't figure him out,
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it was that Scando thing or something. Barry Dugan was saying, okay, it's really hard to get this kid out of his hotel room. So once we get him out of the hotel room, don't let him go back in. Keep him out as long as you can. I was like, okay, why are you giving me all these one-on-one, things all the time? And give me the difficult kids.
I love the idea, and I'm sure most of our listeners would know this, but there was a time before I knew this that Transworld, being the magazine that it was, it had a lot of Burton in it at that time. And I remember sitting with a bunch of people down in Vegas and somebody spelling it out to Harry Goons, who's the owner of Rad Air Snowboards, saying, listen, you guys, all you need to do to get into our magazine is send your guys out with our photographers. So go and look at the list of guys that work for Transworld. call them up. We'll even give you their numbers. Pay for them to go shoot with your guys somewhere exotic. That's going to be, good shots. You use your shots for your catalogs, and then send us the rest of the shots. That's how shots get in the mags. And I was such a kid at that time hearing that. I was like, I just thought there was like some sort of radar on the best snowboarders in the world, and they just materialized in front of, I don't know where the photographers came from. I didn't know where the magazine shots came from.
Yeah.
But I do remember being a kid thinking like, oh, it doesn't mean that these guys are the best. It means they're the ones in this, machine. When you're like 18 years old, you're kind of going, wait, how does the world work? And I remember having like a feeling of like, oh, like we talked about with Craig, there's a formula for doing this.
Yeah.
And
it's a little bit of an A and a little bit of a B. Yes, they are the best.
Yes.
And people recognize their talents, and it's like companies did pay for them to get into the magazines for sure, because they're paying me,
right,
and all the other amazing photographers to go out and say, hey, go out with our athletes, take pictures, and then give us the photos because we paid you. But more importantly, we want you to distribute all those photos to all the magazines,
please,
as best you can. And we're like, I can do that for you.
Yeah, because
so you're going to pay me, and then the magazine's going to pay me again.
Yeah, it's perfect. It's a perfect.
It's
strategy.
a win-win-win-win situation.
Yeah,
so
totally.
I'm cool with that.
It made sense a few years later when I went on a photo shoot and somebody made me sign a model release, and I was like, oh wait, we are models. That's what it is.
Yeah.
If you're snowboarding as an athlete in front of a camera, it's like a modeling shoot, kind of. I mean,
and you know what? I was at that level where I had an assistant working for me, and all that stuff. So that's what we did. We had every athlete pretty much sign a model release, and it just because it was just advised that that's what we do, right? And that's the way it is.
Yeah.
The work.
So let's talk about that real quick, because now with everything being on the internet, as soon as you put a photo on Instagram, someone can screen capture it and not give you credit and use it to try and sell snowboards somewhere. It's a difficult industry, right?
It's so different now, and I think that's why I kind of stepped back from it a little bit. You used to have a lot of control of your images in the old days. Nowadays, you don't have that control over your images.
Right.
The very second that it goes on any internet whatsoever, you've lost that image. You might as well just say goodbye to it. It's complicated.
It is complicated for sure. And there are a couple of very vocal snowboard photographers saying, look, you know what? If you're using my image to sell something or to make money or to promote something that is a for-profit, you're going to have to pay. Like I have a day rate or I have a per use fee and expect an invoice. And then other photographers saying, well, good luck cashing those invoices. And he's like, come on, we got to band together. And in some ways it feels like a losing battle, and in other ways it feels like
that has been a battle since day one.
Yep.
Of like always taking photographs and then battling potential people are going to buy it or people are stealing it.
Right.
I think people don't understand, but from what I understand is the law states that as soon as you push that button, you have copyrighted that image.
Yeah.
So that's actually the law. It says that you correct me if I'm wrong. I want people to respond to this and say I'm wrong. But as soon as I push that button on the top of my camera, I have copyrighted that image. And therefore, it's already copyrighted. So if anybody is trying to use that without my permission, then there's an issue.
Absolutely. Right.
Yeah.
Definitely the internet makes that gray area really difficult, right? Like, what are you going to do? How do you go through and find people? And then, like you say, it is your copyrighted image. It's just a matter of, like, when people just take something from the internet and give no photo credit or don't have any interest in finding who took the photo.
Yeah.
Because they're just going, oh, well, I'd go, photo credit internet. It's like, well, that's not...
Courtesy of the
yeah,
internet.
Exactly.
Thanks, internet. You're great.
Speaking of great photos, and this is one of my favorites of the entire bunch, on the Instagram, I've seen this, the photo of Craig coming through I want to call it a keyhole. All right, this shot is almost directly below the Terrier shot.
Oh, I call it the hole.
Yeah, the hole. It's one of my favorite snowboard images that's been taken by anyone ever. It's an absolutely gorgeous shot.
I keep trying to sell other prints of Craig and everything, and everybody comes back and says, I want to buy the whole print.
I
I'm like, you know what?
I want that.
Photographically, it's not that great of a shot, but it has an amazing story, and that's what that image is about. The image is about this amazing backstory,
Right.
And let me just go back to that story.
Please.
And what happened was, I lived on this street in West Fernie, and down the street from me was a helicopter pilot named Jimmy. So I called up Jimmy, and Craig was living in my house at the time in Fernie. He spent winters there, right?
Rad.
And, we wake up in the morning and we're like, what do you want to do today? I don't know. Let's call up Jimmy and go flying, right? So we call up Jimmy, and Jimmy's like, I'm busy. There's a guy in Cranbrook named Mark. You can grab him. And so we call up this operation in Cranbrook, and it's a young pilot. He's 20-something years old, and he flies over. And I had this 5-acre property in Fernie, and he lands in my yard,
nice.
Like Jimmy used to do. Jimmy used to always fly up the street basically and land in my yard, and we would walk out of the house and jump in the helicopter, and we're like, Jimmy would be like, where do you want to go? And we're like,
God.
And we'd have a topo map. I think there's a picture on my Instagram actually of Craig holding a topo map, and we're like, he's in the helicopter, and in the background, he's in the front seat. I'm shooting from the back seat, and in the background is my house.
That is so rad.
Anyway, so this one day we got this young rookie pilot, and we're like, well, we want to go towards the Three Sisters. So we fly in that way, and there's this mountain pass, a little narrow pass between the Three Sisters, and it's very windy. And he was not a very good pilot, and he kept pretending he was trying to land.
Oh, no.
And I've seen people when they land, they slow up, right?
Totally.
This guy was not slowing up, and he would come up to the pass and go whizzing by it, and he's like, oh, I caught a crosswind there. Let me circle around a little bit,
God.
And so he does this 3 times where he's really pretending he's going to land, but he's not landing. And kind of get a little bored of it, and Craig and I are sitting in the back, and every time he kind of heads north and past the pass where we're trying to land, I'm sitting on the left side, and I look out the window, and there's this tunnel through this rock I've never seen before. It's right behind the Three Sisters, which is completely visible from Fernie. And I tap Craig on the shoulder, and I'm like, oh, my God, look at that. And we look at it and I go, holy shit. And then we tell the pilot, hey, go around, come back around. We want to look at this feature that looks like a cave through the rock. So we kind of fly around, and next thing you know, Craig and I are saying, oh my God, we got to come back. It's like, okay, there's no light on it right now. It's going to get spring light. It's going to be a spring thing. So when that happens, we got to come back and shoot this. And the pilot's like, so what do you want to do? And we're like, take us home.
Oh, wow.
We're done for the day. So we go back home and we land, and we're like, shit, we gotta do this. So we actually, while we're in the helicopter flying around spending someone else's money, we're making plans to return. I believe it was that April. So Craig comes back that April with another photographer, Ari Markopoulos.
Yep.
Amazing guy, so fun, New York photographer. What a character. Love that guy. And Brian Iguchi.
Oh, nice.
Brian Iguchi was the other...
So you mentioned at the beginning of this that you don't think this is a very good photo. Is that technically or like...
Technically, it's not that, whatever. It's just a documented photo to me where I'm sitting on this, just this flat area with a helicopter landed and dropped us off.
Yeah.
And we take this shot, and then Ari has this huge plan where he's going to use my image as a sequence.
Yep.
He brought like an 8x10 view camera, like the big old, 1900s view camera with the cloth where you put over your head.
Yeah.
And you snap the shot. So he takes a picture of the hole with his 8x10, and then he overlays my sequence, I guess, of Craig, right?
Right.
And so that becomes a poster, and you don't think of it at the time, but it becomes an iconic poster.
Totally. This shot is the shot, I think, because you can see his tracks, and you can see that his tracks hug the exact shape of the rock.
Yeah.
And then you can see the slough from his turn, like one before this.
Yeah.
And then he's just on the tip of where he's spraying. Oh, yeah, it's like the shadow of his slough that he's in, but he's right at the edge. I think it's
on
a
his
perfect
toe side.
shot. It just seems like an unbelievably well laid out shot to me.
Yeah, and the image has 110 likes, so it's like it's early on. It's my most sought after image, and on my Instagram, no one really pays any attention.
Isn't it unbelievable? Right? Yeah. So that doesn't really, the likes thing doesn't really correlate to anything. It has something more to do with when you put it out, or
and it's my early on kind of thing.
Yeah, that's a gorgeous shot.
Ty Peterson likes it, so that's important.
Yeah, there you go. And Kevin Jones.
Okay, so you look at the image, and after Craig went through that, we literally boot packed up to the hole.
Yep.
And we had lunch in the hole.
That's amazing.
So it's not really that crazy of a thing.
Right,
the top is very steep, and then you have to have enough snow.
Yep.
To make it happen.
The lighting was perfect that day. It was nice. The snow.
And it was spring because otherwise it's absolutely north facing, so there's no light.
Oh wow.
And then a young, let's rewind a bit. A young Travis Rice has this poster hanging in his bedroom as he was growing up, and he's sitting around Baldface Lodge after he does his ultra natural snowboard progression thing, right, at Baldface. And he's sitting there with John Buffrey, who's a guide that did a lot of work with Craig.
Totally.
And, they went to Japan together and stuff. That's another story. And so Travis starts talking, after, a drunk night at Baldface about he had this poster in his room, and he wanted to do that tunnel. He wanted to do that thing, right?
Yep.
So then Buffrey's sitting there, and he goes, well, let's do it.
Nice.
So the next morning, they jump in like 18 different helicopters.
Oh, God.
Or whatever, Red Bull helicopters.
Sure.
I'm kidding. They had two helicopters.
I understand, The Red Bull
So they jump in two Red Bull helicopters.
Yep.
They fly to Fernie direct from Baldface, Nelson, BC. And they land in Fernie, and they call me up. And Buffrey's like, hey, man, we just arrived in Fernie in our private helicopters, and we're just grabbing some sandwiches. And I'm with Travis Rice and a bunch of dudes, and we're shooting a right guard commercial or yada, yada. So anyways, and then we're talking for a bit, right?
Yeah.
So Buff's like, hey, so kind of was wondering, where's the hole in the wall? And I'm like, you're kidding me. You just flew here in an entourage and two helicopters shooting a right guard commercial, and you're asking me where your location is.
Oh, my God. Amazing.
And I'm like, guess what? I'm not telling you.
Awesome. Did he eventually get it out of you, or did you just?
And then he goes, "Oh wait, Travis wants to talk to you."
Yeah.
So then I get on the phone with Travis. Hey, dude, and then we talk for a bit, and then Buff comes back on. So you're gonna tell us where it is? I said, you know what? I'm just kidding around. I'll tell you where it is.
That's incredible. So
they grab sandwiches in town. They jump back in their helicopters. They fly behind the Three Sisters. Seriously, it's like a 5-minute flight. It's super close. They all jump out of the helicopter. He rides through it. They jump back in the helicopter, and they make it back to Baldface for what they called is Soup 30, which is they serve soup at 11:30 a.m.
Whoa.
at Baldface, and they're like, "We got to make it back. We got to shoot this. We got to make it back to Baldface for soup 30."
Unreal. That is incredible. So let's look at. I've pulled up. I believe it's Ken. Oh no, it's. Does anybody know who this is? North America Champs, Sunshine Village. So it's from the photo shoot day where the guy hits somebody on top of the quarter pipe.
Oh, that's Carl Achenbach.
Is that Carl on the?
So
on the
I'm not sure who the rider is, but the person
okay.
that was standing on top of the
Carl
the edge
yeah.
is Carl Achenbach.
At the top of the feed, there are 3 shots from the day we're talking about. In one of the shots, Carl Achenbach is getting hit. In another, there's a calm guy in the sky with red mitts. And in the third, there's an upside-down guy in a yellow K-Way jacket.
So Carl was standing there, and then, if anybody out there knows who the rider is.
What is the image of Carl getting hit by the guy on the swallowtail? Was that wasn't staged? That was actually...
No, not at all.
Like, oops.
If you look at the image before,
yep.
There's Carl standing on the exact same edge.
Yep.
And it's Anders Tanner from Switzerland.
Yep.
And so he's doing like a backflip.
It's incredible. Like, that's a giant flip. Oh yeah, he's got the Swiss issue gloves on. Yeah,
and he has the yellow K-Way jacket thing on.
Yeah.
And you see in the background, there's Terry Kidwell.
There's Terry right in the middle of all that action. Yeah.
Yeah. There's
Is that Ken to the left?
No, in the red and yellow, it's the other Achenbach. It's the younger Achenbach.
What a shot! So you take this shot. Was this ever printed in a magazine, or is this something that?
No, I don't think
magazines?
So. No, not the one of Anders Tanner was not published, and I don't think the other one of the Achenbach being hit.
I thought there's another one. Somebody flying on it might be Kidwell actually, on a Kidwell roundtail from that same year.
Mm-hmm.
Same shot, really. And the guy in the yellow looks like Jake, but I don't think that is Jake.
No, there was no Jake Burton at that.
Jake wasn't at that one.
Are you talking about the guy in the race ski sweater?
Yeah.
With black and gray?
Yeah.
With huge red mitts?
Huge red mitts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's kind of a cool shot.
It's such a cool shot.
Because it shows the crowd.
Yeah.
And I think somewhere in that photo it talks, people are like scanning it for themselves.
Yeah. Yeah, because that would have been...
So it really shows a crowd shot.
An iconic day, right?
Yeah, and there they are. And there's this guy just on this gorgeous little Sims switchblade or whatever that is.
That's a Terry Kidwell roundtail.
Oh, it's a Terry Kidwell,
beautiful,
sorry.
Beautiful one.
And, well, back then it was just a regular board.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Again, if someone knows who this guy is with the big red mitts and the gray ski sweater.
Isn't that fun when someone comes out and says, like, hey, that was me. And that shot changed my life. Or it's like, that's incredible. What a fun time that we live in.
That's what the shot from Powder Magazine was.
Yeah, let's talk about that one, which is he's on that pointy nose avalanche. All right, this shot is just above the last series of shots.
With the hard boots.
With hard boots, too. I didn't even know.
So he's a little kid.
Yeah.
And his name is Damien Buckley.
Damien Buckley, I've heard of him, too.
And he became a pro snowboarder for a while.
Yep.
And I believe he's into restoring cars and stuff.
Very cool.
And he's a great guy. I think he's in Calgary. He comes to Fernie once in a while.
And look at his...
Hopefully he'll be here.
Shades around his... the shades have fallen off. He's got a leash to some plate bindings. And
isn't that weird? And it's an image of him wearing a K-Way jacket.
K-Way, totally. Or like maybe OP. Could be that OP windbreaker stuff. Yeah,
it's like the windbreaker pullover thing.
Yep.
And his shades are with his croquis holding his shades is around his neck.
Just amazing.
And he's wearing big white plastic, black and blue plastic white, ski boots. with his avalanche snowboard.
It's almost impossible to tell how high off the ground he is.
He's probably anywhere between 3 to 5 inches.
Yeah, exactly. He's just barely in the air. But the shot is incredible, too, because this is going to be one of the first shots of a photographer shooting a snowboarder, too, right?
Yeah,
like,
so that's the effervescent Tom Shea Jr.
right
in the background. You know, he shows up at Sunshine Village and saying, I am starting a magazine. I have a couple of issues out called Real Radical.
I remember that.
And I'm going to change the name to International Snowboard Magazine.
ISM, yeah.
I remember talking to him, and he was like, some people found Real Radical a little too, radical, too intimidating or something.
Yeah.
And so he's going to change the name to ISM, and so there he is taking photos for potentially, it might have been his very first issue of ISM.
That's so rad. That's so rad. Yeah, because the Radical magazine was absolutely radical or something, and it was it not like a newsprint thing?
Yeah, absolutely radical, sorry. Yeah.
And it was newsprint, right? Like
it was like newsprint, yeah.
And then ISM was just this gorgeous magazine. I had a few copies of it that someone
they still had kind of a paper print thing going on.
Oh, did they? Yeah. Oh, inside. It was like a glossy outside, and inside was like newsprinty.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. That's such a rad shot. Well,
yeah.
Let's talk about this absolutely amazing lifestyle shot, like we were talking before, of Craig. It's just above that. This is only a couple of days ago you posted this up. And I absolutely love reading the captions of your photos, and this one is definitely behind the scenes of what was going on with Craig at this moment. So he has a beach house in Oregon.
Seaside, Oregon.
Seaside, which is gorgeous, just an absolutely amazing place.
Yeah.
In fact,
so he moves there early on in his career, because I guess he grew up in Bellevue or Bellingham or whatever it was.
Just outside.
Yeah, around that.
I think
area.
they maybe moved around even.
Yeah, but he was a Northwester.
Yeah, for sure.
So he moves into Seaside, and there's funny stories about him being a successful snowboarder and trying to break into the surf scene.
Oh.
And the Oregon coast surfers were very very possessive and very private about their secret locations, right?
For sure.
And when they saw Craig Kelly in the water, they were very upset.
Wow.
But there's, I forget the guy's name, but he shapes boards, and he still does.
Yeah.
He's got a place up in Glacier.
Nice.
In near Mountain Baker,
mm-hmm.
And he, I talked to him, and he said, I would take Craig out in the water, and this guy, which I wish I could remember his name, amazing human, would take him out and say, look, he's with me.
Cool.
Don't worry about it. He's with me.
Cool.
Yeah. And he would take care of Craig and take him out into the waves, and then people wouldn't bother him, right?
That's amazing.
But when this photo was taken,
yep.
I was with Michelle Taggart, and we were going to go to Jake Blattner used to have a annual Halloween party at his house in Salem, Oregon.
Cool.
And so I went up to Craig's, and I called Michelle and said, hey, I'm going to Craig's for a bit. Do you want to come with me? And she said, yeah, that'd be fun. And so we go up there, and we hiked the trail from his house in Seaside to Cannon Beach.
Wow.
And Craig was like, hey, man, I want to show you these crystal caves and yada, yada. So, three of us hiked this amazing coastal trail that is just full, kind of unknown in a sense, to these amazing crystal caves, and then ended up in Cannon Beach. In the process, I somehow missed my flight back to Calgary.
Right.
I had a very upset wife at the other end because it was the days before cell phones.
Yeah. Where are you? What were you doing?
She was very upset. Yeah. And it was just kind of a magical day.
That's awesome.
Hanging out with these two people. I'm going to actually, I think I'll post my next shot will be of Michelle Taggart and Craig Kelly on that very same hike.
Cool.
As we're walking. Yeah, beautiful shot of those two together.
That's awesome. I love to see that.
On the same roll, in fact, of a film that I cross-processed. That's why the color is a little funny in that image.
The color is pretty cool. It's greenish on my screen.
It's because it's cross-processed. I shot, I believe I shot slide film and then cross-processed it to negative film, just to kind of mess her up a little bit.
Very cool. Yeah, that's what you used to have to do. You had to use filters. You had to actually know how to make photos exciting.
Mm-hmm.
Instagram,
and that was like
takes out of that.
Film put into my Leica M6, shooting in with my Leica.
Very cool.
It was a great moment, and he just bought that van.
That's the van from the. If you've seen the home video edit that they did of that trip, that's the van.
Yeah, he just bought it. He went down to California.
Yep.
And he hung out with the owner of the van for 3 days in California to decide. He's like, I just really need to figure out if this is the van right for me.
Wow. And
he just hung out with the previous owner at his house for 3 days just to kind of learn the van and figure it out if it was right for him. That's the kind of the way his process was,
What a beautiful man. That's just incredible. That's so awesome. And thanks for sharing that story. That's really cool. I don't know if this is the house Kelly Joe mentioned that at the Oregon house, or one of them. I don't know if he had more than one, if he'd moved around or what. But she said he got in a fight with the neighbors over whatever, like dumb neighborly stuff. Mm-hmm. And the neighbor put like a cow's head or something like that on the doorstep, like to try and scare him off. I think maybe he just dried it out and then had like a cow skull in the backyard.
I think this house was a previous purchase, so he might have. I remember him having a house or two on the coast of Oregon, so I might be wrong, but
right.
I think it was a fairly recent house after the post Kelly.
Post Kelly Joe. You know what? She said that they remained good friends, and and like she spoke to him right up until he left for the trip.
Oh, they always talked. I mean, for sure they got along great.
Yeah,
and I remember when I first met him.
Yep.
He had a little house in Glacier.
Yep.
And I remember, I was just, a young, dumb photographer and going to Glacier for some reason. I don't even remember shooting Craig there, but getting contacting him, staying at his house in Glacier, and he had one of those, cedar California hot tubs.
Rad.
When he was with Kelly Kelly Joe at the time.
Yep.
And going to his house and sleeping at his house, hey, cool, man, thanks for inviting me, and both getting into his, cedar California hot tub naked and hanging out. It's like one of those hot tubs where there's no seats in it.
Yeah, you're just sitting on the floor.
It's so small. You're in this little wooden crate.
Yeah.
And full of hot water, and you're just kind of squatting and just hanging out and talking.
Awesome.
It's just like
so awesome. Yeah. Yeah. And so, are you friends still with Savina?
You know what? I didn't really know her.
Right.
Because
that's after this trip.
Craig, Savina kind of was introduced to Craig through John Buffrey.
Yep.
When Craig, that's what I understand.
Yep.
When Craig moved to Nelson.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was the Nelson. It was such a kind of late part of his life, right?
Totally.
And before that, he was in Fernie, and he bought property here. And that's another story because I was going to buy the property off a friend, and then Craig ended up buying that property. It's another story. But and he was dating a girl here that was a masseuse at Island Lake Lodge named Amber. And Amber and Craig lived in my house. And Craig's like, you know what, man? Fernie feels right to me. and I think this is where I'm supposed to be, you know.
Cool.
Like, Fernie's perfect for me. I said, okay, that's cool. And then he breaks up with Amber, and he's like, you know what, man? Fernie doesn't feel right now. Fernie's not the right feeling for me, man. I just need to hit the road and figure life out. And it's okay, cool. So he goes to Nelson because he was with John Buffery, you know, doing avalanche courses with going to Japan with Buff and
cool.
This and that, you know, and Buff came to Fernie a couple of times. So he kind of gets rallied into the Nelson scene through Buff, and that's what I understand. And so that was kind of like the post-Fernie thing. And then while he's in Nelson, you know, he hooks up with Baldface.
Yep.
You know, gets a good rapport with Jeff over there at Baldface and hang out with Buff and meets Savina and so on and so forth, right?
Right.
So that was like the last stage of his life was that whole kind of Nelson scene and all life is good. And
how long had he been with you in Fernie? Did he live there for a year or two, or did he? He
was in my house in Fernie for a couple of winters.
Right.
And then he bought the property here. But he bought the property, and then him and Amber kind of broke up, and then he didn't spend a lot of time on the property because it was just like it was like a 5-acre parcel and a 6-acre parcel, and there was like a shack on it.
Right.
So he spent a little time in the shack, and then he just kind of exited.
Yeah, and then he did that big trip.
Yeah, then he did the trip basically, and you know he kind of got involved with the whole Nelson scene, and then did the trip.
Yep.
And then came back and had the baby and stuff.
Yeah.
Well, I had the baby in Chile, but.
Right. Right. So amazing the way that he's like, brought back this souvenir. It's a child. It's like unbelievable. That's great.
Yeah, and you know he always had a plan. He was always just, you know, this is what I'm doing and this is how I'm going to do it, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Talking to him on the phone, he was like, you know, I got this kid, so I got a choice here. I can do an American passport. I can do a Canadian passport. I can do a Chilean passport.
Nice.
He's like, I'm going to give the kid a Chilean and a Canadian passport.
Oh, that's amazing. That's great. Yeah, he really didn't base himself out of the United States for those last few years.
No.
And it wasn't, he didn't have anything against the States from what I hear. There's nothing about that. It was just what he wanted to do, he had to go to Canada to do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he just evolved up here somehow. And I think it was backcountry, you know?
Yeah.
Is the freedom to roam and ride.
Yeah.
And just...
And have somebody fly a helicopter down the road and land in your yard? I don't think you could do that in the States.
You know, I honestly think, you know, his first contact in Canada was, you know, going to a contest in Whistler, mm-hmm. and then being involved with the Camp of Champs in Whistler, mm-hmm. and seeing the whole, you know, that whole Whistler scene.
Yep.
And then when he discovered another part of BC and how remote and how calm and how less people there is, mm-hmm. I think that was so important to him to step back from, you know, just the scene, right?
That's interesting, yeah.
Yeah.
I always thought that he kind of just got burned out on contests and just said, you know what, I'm going to find something else. But as he discovers an alternative to contest riding, it's like, wow, mm-hmm. I want to do this. How do I do this full time?
Yeah. You know, that's probably what it was, you know. He's just like, wow, I'm riding powder.
Yep.
Someone's paying me to do it. I can do this as a living.
Yeah.
You know, how can I make this keep on keeping on?
Mm-hmm. John Buffery said Craig would write his travel budget and his yearly plan, and then one year he just said, you know what, I'm gonna write you in, Buff, as advisor and submit the proposal and see what happens. And Burton came back and said, yeah, that's fine, approved.
Yeah, you know what, Craig ran Burton. He's just like, I'm going to do this. And Burton's like, yep, do whatever you want. I'm good. We're good with it.
Yeah, I think Jake.
You go do Craig stuff.
Yeah, Jake got the. Neither of them got the bad end of the stick on that deal, right?
No, not at all. And he was always such a kind of a hard businessman in a sense. Like he wrote a contract with Island Lake Lodge, and my wife was like the CEO of Island Lake for 5 years.
Yep.
So they'd have to sit down and hash out a contract together, right?
Right.
Craig as an athlete, and Island Lake as his kind of sponsor or whatever.
Yep.
And he was, my wife Beth always talked about how, he was very respectful, but he was just a very hard negotiator, with everything to do with Island Lake Lodge, right? And
incredible.
And then that's how he ran, when he bought the properties, and when he, became partners with Baldface.
Yeah.
When he went to Baldface, he learned a lot of stuff. He learned business. He grew with Island Lake Lodge.
Right.
He grew with like how to do business and how to make a living as a snowboarder.
Mm-hmm.
And dealing with businesses like this. He learned everything off Island Lake Lodge, and then he took what he learned and he took it to Baldface. And, just really helped Jeff along the way with a lot of things, and which is a good thing, But,
total, yeah. Again, the symbiosis of he's not just out for himself. He is also out for himself, but he's not at the cost of a business or something. He wants everybody to be elevated. And you know what? A lot of the guys I've talked to that had close interactions with Craig said that about other parts of his life, right? Like, so if when he started not Camp of Champions, but Craig Kelly's camp, he invited his friends. He said, listen, this is going to be a great summer job. Come up here and coach and get paid and enjoy, summer snow and skateboarding and mountain biking and all this awesome stuff up in BC. He wasn't ever trying to exploit anyone. He's just always trying to, get his friends to enjoy life too. If somebody was feeling down or having a bad year, he might, take them on a trip down to Cabo and be like, hey, you know what? Let's just go surf. Let's go have a fun time. It was just his style. It seemed like he was very generous with what he had as well and sharing it with his friends.
Yeah, I think so in a sense, but he was also, like I said, he was a very astute businessman, right?
Yeah, right.
So he definitely manipulated things, and he found ways to make things work for him.
Oh, sure.
But when he was in control, he helped people a lot.
Yeah, totally. That makes
what I mean?
sense.
And he was in control all the time.
Yeah.
So he helped a lot of people.
Yeah. Keith Wallace was one of his teammates on Burton. He said, you know what, Craig wrote my contract, basically. We just sat down and he went, no, yes, more here. Here you go.
There's a snowboard shop here in Fernie called Edge of the World.
Yeah. And
they have a huge vintage snowboard collection.
Oh, cool.
And recently, the head ski patrol, Robin Siggers, gave them a custom snowboard with Craig's signature on it.
Rad.
And I walked in there, and I'm like, hey, where'd that board come from? And like, Craig gave that to Robin and signed it for him, because Robin said he was interested in snowboarding, which he's kind of not, but he doesn't snowboard. But, all of a sudden, Craig gets, signs a board and just gives it to him. And it's just like you hear those stories all the time about, Craig gave me this and that and took care of me and, signed this and that. And just like it happens everywhere.
Totally.
The guy was just all over the place, and just really involved with people in Chile and the States and Canada and just kids and just people that were just common people. It wasn't always like pros or people that was going to be helping Craig or advancing him somehow. Right. It was always, it was street kids. I saw him in Chile, just hanging out with street kids or,
right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. And I think that's what makes Craig the ultimate ambassador for our sport is the fact that he was doing it before you could do it places. Like, he'd have to go as an ambassador for snowboarding and say to a ski resort, like, you should think about letting snowboarders on here.
Yeah.
That's not the same for Travis Rice. He can fly his Red Bull helicopters into Fernie to location scout. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like he has to say to somebody, hey, you know what, maybe let me try this thing out on this mountain where you're going anyways. Like, it's not like that. So Craig,
it wouldn't have been the direction that Craig would have gone. Craig would have been going towards split boards.
Yeah.
And just that quiet moment in the backcountry feeling. He would have gone into snowboarding. He would have gone into split boarding.
I think you're right, totally.
He would have been kind of that direction, being a guide, and just live. He was moving towards a simple life.
Yeah.
Just simplifying things,
Yeah.
I think I've said in some of my posts where he was always trying to find balance. So if he was involved with public too much, then he would try to find balance by being away from public. And he would even without spend time with him, he just like, I see him using his left hand eating or something, and he'd be like, why are you doing that? I said, well, I just need balance. I've been using my right hand to eat, so now I'm using my left hand just to,
That's absolutely amazing.
That's what he would do, and I'm like, I do that now, which drives me nuts. Like I'm doing more and more stuff with my left hand just to balance things out. And I'm like, damn it.
Yeah, well, you know what? You've just passed it on to me, because as soon as you said it, I was like, that's brilliant. That's brilliant. Of course. Like,
but he did that. Like, he'd stretch one way.
Yeah.
Because he'd be like, you know what? I'm always stretching this way. And then I realized that I'm never going the other way, and I was like, I got to spend more time doing things the opposite of what I want to do,
Right.
And just physical stuff, just really minute, trivial little things he would always try to do with something else.
Yeah. I could see him split boarding, no boarding, and then switching stances and coming out and riding when you're goofy-footed just because, right?
Yeah, exactly. And surfing, that's what surfing was to him.
Yeah.
It was because, everything you do is like snowboarding and whatever. You're kind of hunched over and you're kind of in this balanced kind of attack position down the fall line.
Yeah.
And he always mentioned that about surfing, because surfing was, you're the opposite. You're arching your back because you're spending most of your time paddling.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
So you're on the board and you're arching backwards and you're using these muscles the opposite direction you would in snowboarding when you're paddling.
Oh, I never even thought of that.
So he's always stretching out the pecs and the front muscles by, laying on your stomach and paddling. It's such an opposite thing of snowboarding, and he liked that. He liked that concept, right?
That's incredible. Yeah. No, you're blowing my mind.
Well, that was something that we would talk about all the time. We'd be in a hotel room or traveling in a car or something, and that would just be shit you talk about, right?
Yeah, incredible. He's such an incredible human being. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I just want to let people know that he wasn't perfect. And a lot of times he was a bastard.
Oh, yeah. You know what?
But he was a friend, and he was a trickster, and he would just pull shit on me all the time,
Elmer.
Like, we would get in wrestling matches.
Yeah.
Like, you'd be waiting for a helicopter or a cat, and next thing you know, like, you're trying to trip the other person, and you're getting this big wrestling match and throwing snow at each other, and he'd win every time, and he would sit on me and then fart. Every frickin' time.
Unbelievable, this guy. Like a big brother.
I hated it.
Unbelievable.
It's like, you bastard. But, there was times that I won battles for sure.
Oh, that's
I lost battles. He lost battles.
Yeah.
But there was always some trickster thing, and, there's always something,
Yeah.
with the guy. But, and, we had arguments, while he lived in Fernie, and there's times we didn't get along, but it's like being family. It's like being brothers. You always made up, and things worked out.
Yeah, I can't even imagine what it would have been like to be, in that energy. Like you said, Craig grew up as a teenager and in his early 20s, really close to two very powerful powerhouses in snowboarding. Right, like Tom was all about Tom. Ken Ack said that Tom set the course for the first Worlds that he put on, Soda Springs, and basically just cheated and won. Like, he put it on, cheated and won. That's like horrifying. But at the same time, Tom wanted his name to get out there, and it made sense. And then you're talking about Jake and Craig were so tight, and Jake knew business. And so,
Tom always felt ripped off by Craig, but that's the story that everybody knows, right?
Right. The more that I look into the actual details of Craig leaving Sims, Tom was a figurehead. He wasn't Sims. You know what I mean? Like, he was Tom Sims, but the decision to lose Craig, nobody lost any sleep over it until Burton started kicking their ass. And they were like, wait a second. Like, is there something we can do to keep this guy here or to get him back?
Yeah.
And that was more Brad Dorfman than it was Tom Sims.
Yeah.
And it was more Brad Dorfman versus Craig than it was Tom versus Jake.
That's the problem with those guys like Tom and Chuck. They just weren't businessmen,
Not at all.
They're visionaries. They're absolute visionaries.
100%.
And dreamers.
Yep.
And they believed in something,
Totally.
Tom was unbelievable. Obviously, we know the Tom story, skateboarding to snowboarding. And Chuck, man, I had dinner with Chuck last fall, like a year ago, a half ago.
Yeah.
And just sitting there and listening to Chuck stories, in a Mexican restaurant in Southern California. And
so fun.
Oh, my God, that guy is such a lovable little dude.
I love that guy. Yeah, I interviewed him, and I love that guy. He basically told me on tape,
he's so stoked
that like, he would call bullshit on Tom when Tom would try and trick people or like tell the magazines that he invented snowboarding. Chuck would just be in the background going, "No, you didn't. Stop lying. We lived together in a palapa in a commune back then. Tom, he had no idea what snowboarding was." Yeah.
Tom was a bullshitter for sure, but man.
Yeah,
there's so many good qualities.
100%. Yeah, the sport's way better for having had him. And and those boards that those guys put together, unbelievable. Changed the world, man.
Yeah.
Changed the world. Those Sims boards, that iconic Sims base graphic, still to this day, is like one of the raddest parts of snowboarding.
On my Instagram, there's 2 shots in a row of from Big Sky, Montana.
Yeah.
One is they're carving the groomers early morning, Tom Sims and Chuck Barfoot. They're both on their hillsides. Tom just looks amazing on his hillside. He's just beautiful carve. And then Chuck, Chuck looks good.
Yeah.
This short little square guy, but he's got his sunglasses on. And
I was there for that trip. Was that the Transworld Industry Conference?
Exactly, yeah, Big Sky.
I saw those two together, and I was a starry-eyed little kid, and I was like, there are 2 unbelievable legends right there.
That's sweet, because that was the time.
Yeah, that was really the time. Those guys had buried the hatchet, and they were riding together.
Yeah, it's amazing. Like, that was kind of not my scene.
Right.
But, the things that Tom Sims and Chuck Barfoot and Jake went through together, like, in the end, we're all so thankful that they were there and making shit happen.
And pushing each other. Yeah, it was crazy awesome.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? My phone's going to die. Mark, thank you a million for talking to me. And that Craig Kelly stuff for me, that's just the best.
This culture is it's unbelievable. It's still happening. There's amazing people still involved. Still a great thing.
Isn't it crazy to see? I think that snowboarding affected skiing and just ski resorts and the mountain industry in a really positive way.
Oh, so many ways. Snowboarding has affected skiing,
right?
And the whole culture.
Yeah.
And everybody's saying snowboarding has flattened out. Families are switching from snowboarding to skiing. Things are changing, but you know what? I feel like it needs something. Like snowboarding does need something. I admit. It's such a kind of a bro thing right now.
Sure.
I feel maybe I'm wrong, and I don't mind people telling me.
Right.
But we need to bring it back and just bring it back to, just make it more equality, make it family, make it women's sport because they're so important to the sport. Just make it for everybody, make it inclusive.
I feel like we're there. But not in a giant way. You know what I mean?
I think it's going back that direction.
Yeah, the industry's not there because they're just trying to sell things. And but when I talk to Ken Achenbach, which I talked to him last week, and he tells me that anyone who complains about how busy Whistler is but only goes there on the weekends can kiss my ass. I'm like, he's probably right. I don't know. I haven't been there on not a weekend in a long time, and I complain. So, yeah, he's still doing it. The fact that Ken is going out and getting a few hours, a few days a week, snowboarding on Whistler Blackcomb, how amazing is that for snowboarding?
There's so many people. We didn't talk about it. We had a long conversation.
Right.
And Ken Achenbach is an entire conversation on itself.
100%. I agree with you totally. Well, you know what? I'll be hitting you up again, and we'll talk some more. But thank you so much for your time, Mark. It's been great talking with you.
I hope to meet you in person sometime.
Yeah. I'll be up in Fernie at some point, and I will. Maybe I'll fly a helicopter down the street and land in your yard. Doubt it very much. I want to thank Mark Gallup for taking the time to talk to me. That was super fun. I wanted to do FNRad shout-outs this week to Vans, Mike Strato, Intuition Liners, Crystal. I want to shout out Tribute Board Shop. We're going to work with Shane at Tribute. Thanks to all our listeners. You guys are amazing. Be sure to come back next week for another episode of the FNRad Snowboarding Podcast brought to you by Bike Room Productions.